Welcome to the deep dive. We've touched on the fascinating topic of fasting before, looking at its impact on overall health.
Yeah.
Today, we're honing in on something you might be particularly curious about.
Yeah.
How this way of eating, or perhaps more accurately, not eating for periods, can affect your mental health and cognitive function, too.
Right. How does it hit the brain?
Exactly. It might seem a bit counterintuitive, maybe. But let's unpack what happens up there when you fast.
Yeah, definitely. We've previously explored how fasting can influence things like, inflammation and cellular repair throughout the body.
Uh-huh.
And given that your brain is the body's most energy-intensive organ, constantly working behind the scenes, consuming something like 20% of your daily fuel,
20%.
yeah, is a logical next step to consider its specific response to fasting.
20%, it really puts into perspective how much our brains are actually doing, doesn't it? And as you know, glucose is typically its go-to fuel source.
Primary one, yeah.
But what happens when that constant supply of glucose isn't there, like during a fast? That's where the science gets really interesting, I think.
Precisely. When you fast, your body initiates this clever metabolic switch. Instead of relying solely on glucose, it starts breaking down stored fats.
Okay.
And this process releases ketone bodies. Now, what's fascinating for our discussion today is that these ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier.
Ah, right, the gatekeeper.
Exactly. Think of the blood-brain barrier as a very selective gatekeeper for your brain, carefully controlling what gets in. Glucose, easy access, sure, but ketones are like, they get a VIP pass,
Okay.
offering your brain an alternative and readily usable fuel source when glucose is scarce.
So even when you're not eating, your brain isn't just left hanging. It shifts gears, uses a different fuel. Okay, let's really get into the nuts and bolts of this then.
Let's do it.
Our mission in this deep dive is to understand the scientific evidence and maybe the real-world implications of how this metabolic shift during fasting could impact, well, your mental well-being.
Okay, so let's start by considering what this switch, from glucose to ketones might actually do at a fundamental level inside your brain.
Yeah.
One really exciting area of research is neuroplasticity.
Okay, define that for us quickly.
Sure. It's your brain's remarkable ability to adapt, basically, to grow new neurons, forge new connections, really throughout your whole life.
Right.
And there's growing evidence suggesting that fasting might actually encourage these processes.
Early. How?
Well, think of it like this. Fasting could create an environment that's more conducive to your brain, rewiring itself, upgrading its network, so to speak.
Huh. So by introducing periods of fasting, you might be essentially nudging your brain to build new pathways, become more adaptable. That's quite a powerful idea.
It is almost like giving your brain a regular opportunity for, let's say, structural improvement.
Okay.
Then there's the concept of oxidative stress.
Right.
Imagine your brain cells are constantly bombarded by these tiny, unstable molecules, reactive oxygen species. They're just byproducts of normal metabolism.
Okay. Like exhaust fumes?
Sort of, yeah. And over time, these can cause damage. A bit like how metal rusts, maybe.
Gotcha.
Fasting appears to dial down the production of these damaging molecules, potentially offering a kind of protective shield for your precious brain cells.
So it's like fasting helps minimize that cellular wear and tear, keep brain cells healthier longer.
That's the idea, yeah.
You also mentioned mitochondria earlier. For those of us whose biology is a bit rusty, what's their role here? Why are they important in this fasting picture?
Right, mitochondria. They're the tiny powerhouses inside your brain cells.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial.
Powerhouses. Okay.
They're responsible for converting the fuel you provide, whether it's glucose or ketones, into the energy your brain needs for, well, everything. Thinking, remembering, regulating mood.
All of it.
All of it. And research indicates that fasting can actually boost the efficiency of these mitochondrial powerhouses.
Boost their efficiency.
Yeah. So when they're working optimally, your brain cells have more readily available energy to function at their best. It's like fine-tuning the engine of your brain.
Interesting. Okay, so we're seeing fasting can trigger these really fundamental changes, cellular level stuff in the brain, encouraging growth, maybe reducing damage, optimizing energy.
Moves that way.
Now, let's move to an area I know many listeners are keen on. The connection between intermittent fasting and mood disorders, things like depression and anxiety. What's the research landscape look like there?
Yeah, this is definitely a fascinating and actively evolving field. We're seeing emerging evidence that suggests intermittent fasting could have a positive influence.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, a comprehensive review looking at various studies together found that intermittent fasting was associated with improvements in overall mood. and also a noticeable reduction in symptoms of both depression and anxiety
Across different groups of people.
across a diverse range of individuals, yeah.
That sounds quite significant. A review pointing towards benefits across different populations. Were there any specific studies you found particularly compelling?
Yes, there was one study focusing on individuals living with multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
Researchers observed that those who practiced intermittent fasting reported improvements in their emotional well-being, and they also scored lower on measures of depression.
Hmm. Interesting that it showed up in people with a specific health condition. It kind of hints the impact might be broader.
Possibly, yeah.
But as we always emphasize, this is emerging research, right? So we can't definitively say fasting causes these improvements. Not yet, anyway.
Exactly. That's crucial. While these findings are certainly encouraging and they suggest a potential link, it's really important to remember more rigorous scientific investigation is needed.
Right.
We need that to firmly establish a cause and effect relationship, and also to fully unravel the complex biological mechanisms at play. But it's a really promising area. Researchers are definitely digging into it.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's shift focus slightly. Let's delve into another crucial aspect of brain function: cognition. Our ability to think, learn, remember. How might intermittent fasting play into these processes?
Another area where research is ongoing, definitely yielding some intriguing clues.
Chaz?
Well, we have some compelling findings from studies on animal models. For instance, research has shown that animals following an alternate day fasting pattern.
Okay, like fasting every other day.
Exactly. They demonstrated improved learning and memory performance compared to animals consistently fed a high-fat diet.
So in animal studies, fasting seemed to give their cognitive abilities a noticeable edge. What about research involving us humans? Are we seeing similar trends?
There are human studies exploring this, yeah. Although the evidence base is still developing, particularly when we look at healthy adults.
Right.
One interesting study looked at older adults who were observing intermittent fasting during the month of Ramadan.
Ah, okay. So a specific type of intermittent fasting.
Yes. And researchers found improvements in their performance on various cognitive tasks. And interestingly, a reduction in instances of mild cognitive impairment.
That's certainly encouraging, especially when we think about keeping sharp as we age. But it sounds like the research in, say, generally healthy younger or middle-aged populations is still pretty early days.
That's correct. While these initial findings are promising, we really need more well-designed studies, bigger groups, diverse backgrounds, to really solidify these potential cognitive benefits in healthy individuals.
Okay, understood. So we're seeing these potential links, maybe stronger in some areas than others right now, between fasting and both mood and cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
Now let's dig deeper into the how, the underlying mechanisms. How might fasting actually be exerting these positive effects on our overall brain health? And maybe a response to stress, too.
Good question. One key player seems to be something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF for short.
BDNF. Okay, what is that?
Think of BDNF as like a vital fertilizer for your brain.
Okay, fertilizer for the brain. I like that.
It supports the survival of existing brain cells.
Yeah.
It encourages the growth of new ones, and it strengthens the connections between them, synapses.
Right.
And interestingly, studies have shown that fasting can lead to an increase in BDNF levels.
A significant increase.
Well, potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a tiny bump. It could have real implications for your brain's resilience.
So by increasing BDNF, fasting might be making our brains more adaptable, more resilient to stress, better equipped for learning and memory. That sounds pretty fundamental.
Precisely. This boost in BDNF could very well contribute to both enhanced cognitive function and a greater ability to cope with stress.
Makes sense.
What else?
Another important factor is the impact of fasting on inflammation.
Yes, inflammation comes up a lot in health discussions.
It does. And we know that chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body has been increasingly linked to various mental health disorders, including depression and anxiety.
Right.
Fasting has been shown to help lower levels of these inflammatory markers in the body.
It seems to calm down an overactive immune response, in a way. And that can have positive ripple effects on brain health, reducing that systemic inflammation.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. If you reduce the underlying fire, maybe you alleviate some factors contributing to mood issues.
That's one hypothesis, yes.
And you also mentioned autophagy earlier. Can you remind us what that is and how it fits into brain health and fasting?
Right, autophagy. It's essentially your cell's internal recycling and cleanup system, a bit like cellular housekeeping.
Housekeeping, okay.
It's a process where cells break down and remove damaged components, misfolded proteins, other cellular debris, basically taking out the trash and recycling the usable parts.
Got it.
And fasting is known to be a potent trigger for autophagy.
So fasting kicks this cleaning process into high gear.
Exactly. And for your brain, this cellular housekeeping could be particularly beneficial, helping to protect against the buildup of harmful substances that are implicated in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. Think of it as a regular spring cleaning for your brain cells.
So fasting encourages brain cells to tidy up, get rid of the junk, which helps them work better and protects against long-term damage, potentially.
That's the concept, yes.
Wow. Okay, this is all incredibly insightful. But for someone listening who's thinking, okay, this sounds promising, if I wanted to explore this for potential mental health benefits, where do I even start? What practical advice would you offer?
Yeah, that's a crucial consideration. If you're intrigued by these potential benefits, I think the most important advice is start gradually, very gradually.
Okay, no jumping into a 3-day fast right away.
Definitely not. Allow your body and, importantly, your mind time to adapt. Maybe start by progressively increasing your overnight fasting window. Start with 12 hours, then maybe 13 or 14, slowly extend it over weeks or months.
Right. Take it slow, listen to your body. That's key. What about what we eat during the times we are eating? Does that matter much for brain health in this context?
Oh, absolutely. Paramount. The quality of your diet during your eating windows is incredibly important.
So you can't just fast and then eat junk.
No, that likely wouldn't give you the benefits we're talking about. Focus on consuming nutrient-dense foods, things that specifically support brain health.
Like what?
Well, think about sources of omega-3 fatty acids, fatty fish, flax seeds, walnuts, lots of antioxidant-rich fruits and vegetables, berries, leafy greens, and B vitamins, which are essential for nerve function and energy production in the brain.
So provide your brain with the good stuff when you're fueling it. High-quality building blocks.
Exactly.
Makes perfect sense. Anything else people should keep in mind if they're considering trying this?
Staying adequately hydrated, always vital, but maybe even more crucial when you're fasting.
Right. Dehydration affects cognition.
Big time. It can really negatively impact focus and mood, potentially canceling out any benefits. Also, never underestimate the power of sleep.
Always comes back to sleep.
It really does. Consistent, high-quality sleep is just foundational for good mental health, regardless of eating patterns. And finally, maybe incorporating some stress-reducing practices, things like mindfulness, meditation, even gentle exercise like walking. These can complement any potential mental health benefits you might experience with fasting.
So it sounds like if you choose to explore intermittent fasting, it really works best as part of a bigger picture, a holistic approach. Healthy diet, hydration, sleep, stress management.
Precisely. It's not a magic bullet on its own. It's a tool that might work well within a generally healthy lifestyle.
Right.
So, just to summarize what we've explored today, intermittent fasting does show significant promise, potential for positively influencing mental health and cognitive function.
Yeah.
We've talked about potential mood improvement, the reduction of inflammation, enhancing brain resilience through mechanisms like increasing BDNF and activating autophagy.
And while that initial science, particularly from animal studies and some early human research, is definitely encouraging,
It is.
it's important for everyone listening to keep in mind that more extensive, more rigorous research is still needed, right? To give us that complete, nuanced understanding.
Absolutely. We're still learning a lot.
So the potential to integrate intermittent fasting into a broader lifestyle, one that prioritizes balanced nutrition, regular physical activity, effective stress management, that could be a powerful strategy for maximizing benefits for overall mental well-being.
Well said. That holistic view is key.
It really does underscore this deep, intricate connection between our metabolic health, how our body uses energy, and the health of our
It's
minds.
fascinating, isn't it?
It really makes you consider the profound potential of various lifestyle choices, like how and when we eat, to support long-term brain health and resilience. It's definitely something to continue contemplating, I think, as you explore your own path to well-being. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.